April 6, 2024, Summerton, South Carolina. Hundreds of people filed into a high school gymnasium. They came in waves. Family members, friends, neighbors, complete strangers who had only heard the story but felt compelled to be present. The gymnasium was decorated in pink and white. Flowers covered every surface. Signs bearing photographs. Teddy bears. Children's toys left by mourners who couldn't find the right words. They had gathered to remember 3 lives. 22-year-old Markayla Johnson, her 4-year-old daughter Miracle, her 7-month-old son, Messiah, a young mother and her 2 children, gone. Among the hundreds who attended was Carol Tyndall, a family member who knew Markayla well. When asked what she wanted people to remember, her answer was simple. But this wasn't just a story about loss. This was a story about a young woman whose kindness defined her, about 2 children who brought joy to everyone they met, and about a community trying to understand how something this devastating could happen. This is their story, not a statistic, not a headline that fades after a few days.
Women walking in Markayla's footsteps gain the courage to walk in a new direction before it's too late.
Experience any type of domestic violence in any type of way, get help. Don't close your lips to that. Get help.
3 lives that mattered. To understand what happened, you first need to understand who Markayla Johnson was. 22 years old, born and raised in Summerton, South Carolina, a small town about an hour south of Charlotte, a place where everyone knows everyone, where families stay for generations. Those who knew Markayla described her with the same words over and over: kind, generous, sweet-hearted. Her family remembered something specific about her character, something that revealed who she truly was. She would give you the shoes off her feet and walk beside you. Give her last. She was a sweet-hearted person. This wasn't just a figure of speech. Family members recalled actual moments when Markayla gave away her possessions to people she believed needed them more. Food, money, her own belongings. That generosity, that open heart became the center of her world when she became a mother. First came Miracle, 4 years old, bright smile, full of energy and curiosity. Then Messiah, just 7 months old, still learning the world, still discovering his mother's face. The names alone tell you something about what these children meant to her. Miracle, Messiah, not random choices, names that carried meaning, names that represented hope. By early 2024, Markayla was living in Charlotte, North Carolina. She'd moved there seeking opportunity, a chance to build a life for her children. She lived in an apartment complex on Orchard Trace Lane, in the northeast part of the city, not far from Interstate 85, a working-class neighborhood, modest, quiet. Her days revolved entirely around her children, Miracle's schedule, Messiah's needs, doctor appointments, meals, bedtime routines. Everything she did had one purpose: giving her children the best life she could provide. She stayed in close contact with her family back in South Carolina, regular phone calls, video chats so they could see the children, visits when she could manage them. Her mother, her grandmother, Ramona, her aunts and cousins, they were her support system. Contact was consistent, frequent, normal, and then suddenly it wasn't. Markayla met someone. His name was Benjamin Joseph Taylor, 34 years old, 12 years older than Markayla. According to family members, they met through mutual acquaintances. The relationship developed quickly. Within weeks, Taylor was spending significant time at Markayla's apartment. Within 2 months, he had moved in completely. To her family, this felt rushed, concerning. They didn't know much about this man who had suddenly become such a significant presence in Markayla's life and around her children. What they didn't know at the time was Benjamin Taylor's history. Public records paint a troubling picture. Taylor's criminal record dated back to 2007, nearly 2 decades of documented incidents. In 2007, he was convicted of felony breaking and entering in Cabarrus County, North Carolina. In 2011, assault on an officer in Mecklenburg County. In 2016, another assault conviction. In 2018, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, along with substance-related charges in Forsyth County. The record also included previous arrests for kidnapping and violating protective orders. This was not someone without warning signs. This was someone with a documented pattern. But Markayla may not have known the full extent of this history. And by the time concerning patterns began to emerge, Taylor had already established himself in her life and her home. Family members later recalled noticing changes in Markayla's behavior once Taylor moved in. Subtle shifts at first, then more pronounced. She became harder to reach. Phone calls were unanswered or were cut short. Plans to visit family were canceled at the last minute with excuses that felt rehearsed. Social media posts, once frequent and warm, became rare. Friends who had regularly spent time with Markayla found themselves subtly discouraged from visiting. There was always a reason, always something that made it inconvenient. Taylor began accompanying Markayla to activities she had previously done alone. Grocery shopping, medical appointments, even routine errands. Most concerning to family members was how Taylor handled Markayla's phone. He would answer it when they called. He would respond to text messages on her behalf. At the time, these behaviors raised eyebrows, questions, quiet concern among family members who wondered if something was wrong. But Markayla, when they did speak to her directly, seemed defensive. She would explain away the concerns, minimize them, pull back further when pressed. This is a pattern familiar to those who work with individuals in controlling relationships. Isolation doesn't happen all at once. It's gradual, strategic. By the time someone realizes what's happening, they're already separated from the people who could help them. January 20th, 2024, 1330 to 1645. This date would become critically important to investigators because January 20th was the last time Markayla Johnson's family had verified genuine contact with her. It was a routine conversation, nothing unusual, plans for the weekend, how the children were doing, the kind of everyday exchange families have without thinking twice about it. The conversation ended with a simple phrase, "Talk to you tomorrow," words that would haunt her loved ones in the weeks to come. The next day, family members sent text messages. The responses came back, but something felt different, shorter than usual, less personal, missing Markayla's typical warmth and the small details she always included. Where Markayla would typically send voice messages or call back, now there were only brief texts. By the end of January, these messages became increasingly vague. When relatives asked specific questions about the children or suggested visits, the responses deflected, made excuses, claimed they were busy or out of town. This contradicted everything family members knew about Markayla. She had always welcomed family involvement with her children. She called regularly. She sent photos and videos constantly. But now requests for current photos of Miracle and Messiah went ignored or were met with old images recycled from social media. Video call requests were consistently declined. Markayla's mother and other family members drove by the apartment on multiple occasions. Her car was there in the parking lot, but no one answered the door. What prevented an immediate missing persons report was the continued stream of text messages. The messages contained just enough personal details to seem authentic, enough to create doubt. Could she just be pulling away? Did she need space? Was there a problem they didn't know about? Additionally, Markayla was 22 years old, an adult. She had the right to limit contact with family if she chose to. Police wouldn't typically intervene based solely on reduced communication. But as February progressed, the anxiety among family members intensified. Something wasn't right. They could feel it. The messages never sounded quite like Markayla. Family members later described it as missing her voice, the way she abbreviated certain words, her usual emojis, small things that individually seemed minor but collectively felt wrong. 6 weeks of mounting concern. 6 weeks of messages that didn't feel genuine. Markayla's mother made the decision. Family members walked into the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department and filed an official missing persons report. They reported that Markayla Johnson, along with her 4-year-old daughter Miracle and 7-month-old son Messiah, were missing. They explained they hadn't had genuine contact since January. Detectives in the Missing Persons Unit began their investigation immediately. They learned that Markayla lived in an apartment on Orchard Trace Lane with her boyfriend Benjamin Taylor. They attempted to make contact. They began building a timeline. March 5th, 2 days after the initial report, Charlotte-Mecklenburg police officers and family members went to the apartment for a welfare check. They knocked on the door. No answer. They knocked again. Silence. A maintenance worker was able to open the door. He called into the apartment. No response. Seeing nothing obviously wrong from the doorway, he left. But what investigators didn't know at that moment was what surveillance footage would later reveal. The day before, on March 6th, security cameras at the apartment complex captured something significant. Benjamin Taylor, carrying minimal belongings, getting onto a passenger bus.
The state of North Carolina.
What was captured on those cameras would eventually help investigators piece together a timeline of deception that had lasted nearly 2 months. We're going to walk through exactly what happened next, but this story serves a purpose beyond just documenting a tragedy. It's about understanding warning signs, about recognizing patterns, about honoring 3 lives by learning from what happened to them. If you believe these stories deserve to be told with dignity and purpose, consider subscribing to this channel. We're committed to presenting cases like this one with the respect they deserve, and your support makes that possible. March 8, 2024, 5 days after the missing persons report was filed, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department issued a public alert. They released photographs of Markayla, Miracle, and Messiah, asking anyone with information to come forward. The alert described 22-year-old Markayla Johnson, 4-year-old Miracle Johnson, and 7-month-old Messiah Johnson as missing and endangered. The post stated that Markayla hadn't contacted any known family members, and police were concerned about her welfare and the welfare of her children. The public advisory generated leads. Tips came in. Detectives followed every piece of information, but each lead reached a dead end. According to CMPD Chief Johnny Jennings, who would later speak about the investigation, the Missing Persons Unit worked exhaustively through every possibility. Within a week of investigating, all leads were exhausted. That's when detectives began to suspect that this wasn't a case of someone voluntarily staying out of contact. March 15, 2024. After exhausting all other leads, detectives with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department applied for a search warrant for Markayla Johnson's apartment. They had developed probable cause based on several factors: the family's persistent concerns, the inconsistent communication patterns, the suspicious circumstances surrounding the disappearance, and perhaps most telling, what they observed at the apartment itself. Officers noted there were no car seats in Markayla's vehicle, no child care items visible in the apartment. For a mother with a 4-year-old and a 7-month-old baby, this absence was significant. The search warrant was approved. Shortly before 1:45 p.m. that Friday afternoon, officers executed the warrant at the apartment complex on Orchard Trace Lane. What they found inside would transform a missing persons case into a homicide investigation. Inside the apartment, officers discovered the remains of Markayla Johnson. The scene told a disturbing story. Multiple air fresheners had been placed throughout the home. Candles were positioned in various locations. Multiple fans were running. The air conditioning had been set to 62 degrees. These weren't random details. They represented a deliberate attempt to mask and preserve the scene. Homicide detectives and crime scene units were immediately called to the location. But Miracle and Messiah were not found in the apartment. The children remained unaccounted for. Detectives knew Benjamin Taylor had been driving Markayla's vehicle. They obtained another search warrant, this time for the car. March 16, 2024. The following day, investigators executed the search warrant on Markayla's vehicle. In the trunk, they made a heartbreaking discovery. 4-year-old Miracle Johnson and 7-month-old Messiah Johnson were found deceased. The Mecklenburg County Medical Examiner's Office was called to both scenes. Later, autopsy results would reveal that 7-month-old Messiah had substances in his system, including fentanyl, which was determined to be the cause of death, with other substances listed as contributing factors. The medical examiner's report also noted the presence of sleep aids in the child's system. The findings pointed to something methodical, something planned. All 3 bodies showed evidence of concealment, the positioning, the attempts to prevent discovery. This was not impulsive. This was calculated. While the investigation was unfolding in Charlotte, law enforcement was simultaneously working to locate Benjamin Taylor, who had left the state 10 days earlier. Saturday, March 16, 2024, afternoon, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Chief Johnny Jennings stood before cameras and reporters. Behind him stood members of Markayla Johnson's family. Their faces showed the weight of what they just learned: grief, shock, the kind of pain that changes you permanently. Chief Jennings, a 28-year veteran of the department, addressed the media and the public. His words were measured, but the emotion was evident.
He confirmed that the remains found at the apartment complex had been presumptively identified as 22-year-old Markayla Johnson and her children, 4-year-old Miracle Johnson and 7-month-old Messiah Johnson. Chief Jennings later stated that seeing families grieve the loss of their loved ones after violent events, especially when small children are involved, was the most difficult part of his job as police chief. He told reporters that the person they were looking for had been in a relationship with Markayla. He emphasized this was not a random act. They knew who they were searching for. Then members of Markayla's family spoke. Ramona Johnson, Markayla's grandmother, addressed the cameras through tears. "We loved her to death, and she knew that," she said. She asked for prayers and spoke about faith carrying them through. Markayla's mother, struggling to compose herself, said something that would resonate with everyone watching. "I miss my baby. I miss my grandkids. She was a good person, and everybody knows Markayla would do anything for you. She didn't deserve this." Chief Jennings made a promise to the family and to the community. "We're going to do everything we can to bring closure to the family and bring justice to the person responsible for these actions, and we're going to continue until that is concluded." At that moment, investigators believed Taylor was somewhere in North Carolina or South Carolina. They were actively searching for him in the region. They had no idea he was already 2,200 miles away.
The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department had contacted the FBI. U.S. Marshals were notified. A multi-agency manhunt was underway. Investigators had one major advantage: digital evidence. Analysis of Benjamin Taylor's devices and online activity revealed searches that would prove crucial to the case. Searches about decomposition timelines. Searches about concealing evidence. Searches about sending messages from someone else's phone. Cell phone data helped establish his movements after he left Charlotte on March 6th. He had traveled west, across multiple states, covering thousands of miles. By Friday, March 15th, the same day Markayla's remains were discovered, detectives had received information that placed Taylor in Imperial County, California, specifically an area near the Mexico border known as Slab City. If you're not familiar with Slab City, it's an unusual place. Located in the Sonoran Desert of Southern California, it's an off-the-grid community built on the site of an abandoned military base. No electricity, no running water, no formal law enforcement presence. Some people go there seeking freedom from conventional society. Others go there to disappear. Deputies, along with FBI agents and the Border Crime Suppression Team, coordinated their approach. By midday Saturday, all of North County Sheriff's Patrol, the specialized team, and federal agents were making contact throughout the area, gathering information. According to Sheriff's Lieutenant Clinton Arrow, who spoke to media after the operation, it was those contacts that led to someone calling in a sighting of Taylor just before 6 p.m. Taylor was staying in a camp referred to as the Second Guard Shack about 200 yards north of Salvation Mountain, roughly the same distance before reaching the main Slab City area. Law enforcement moved into position. They cordoned off the area. Then they moved in. Body camera footage from Imperial County Sheriff's deputies captured the arrest. The video shows officers approaching a blue tent in the desert landscape. "Benjamin Taylor, we have a warrant for your arrest. Come out with your hands up." Deputies deployed smoke canisters to force him from the footage shows the flash and smoke as officers maintained their positions, weapons drawn. Taylor emerged from the No one was injured during the arrest. He was taken into custody at approximately 7:45 p.m. and transported to the Imperial County Jail. Lieutenant Arrow later praised the coordination between agencies. "We're glad we could work together as a team with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. It shows we're all on the same page, and that's to keep the community safe." Benjamin Taylor had fled more than 2,000 miles. He'd hidden in one of the most remote locations in the continental, but it hadn't been far enough. News of Taylor's arrest reached Charlotte, but there was no sense of victory, no celebration, only the weight of 3 lives lost and a family forever changed. Chief Jennings released a statement calling the deaths a senseless act of violence and a devastating loss for their family and our community. The investigation continued. The iCloud accounts he had accessed, the search history, the timeline of his activity. What emerged was a picture of calculated for approximately 6 weeks after the estimated time of the deaths. Taylor had used Markayla's phone to send messages to her family. He crafted responses designed to mimic her style. Investigators found drafts of these messages in his accounts, evidence of the planning that went into maintaining the illusion that during those same weeks, surveillance footage showed Taylor making multiple trips between the apartment and Markayla's vehicle. He purchased supplies from nearby stores, air fresheners, all of it documented, all of it building toward the moment when the truth would inevitably surface. On March 18, Benjamin Taylor was formally charged with 3 counts of murder and 1 count of concealment of death. He would remain in Imperial County Jail while North Carolina worked through the extradition process. The evidence against Benjamin Taylor was substantial, but the legal process was just beginning.
He was charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of concealing a body. Taylor stood before District Judge Carla Archie today and pleaded not guilty to those crimes. The DA's office says that Taylor was offered a plea deal which he rejected, meaning Taylor will now go to trial for these charges.
Funeral service for Markayla, Miracle, and Messiah took place at Scotts Branch High School in Somerton, South Carolina.
Us in your prayers. Jesus is in charge of everything that's going on right now. We can't do no more than what expected. So y'all just keep praying for us. Have mercy on each and every one of us. And God bless you. And may this be over soon. And I thank y'all.
Ma'am, could you say your name? Could you say and spell your name for us?
Yes, my name is Ramona Renee Johnson, R-A-M-O-N-A. Johnson, J-O-H-N-S-O-N.
And your relationship?
And I am the grandmother of my daughter, Markeisha, and the grandmother of Markayla, and the great-grandmother of Messiah and Miracle. And I appreciate y'all coming out here.
Is there anything at all you want to say about your granddaughter as a person? What do you want the community to know about them and the kids or anything like that?
She didn't deserve this. She wasn't an evil person or nasty person. She was real sweet. She just had some mental problems, but that was it. And you know, everybody had some problems. But we never knew that something like this was going to happen to her because it was unexpected. Unexpected. Never knew. We just didn't know. And we love her to death, and she knew that. I mean, who was to say a man that she think that she loved was going to kill her?
Obviously, police are looking for that person. What would you say to encourage the public to turn them in, provide any information?
Yes, if y'all see anything,
can help.
anything,
Y'all know anything.
y'all see the posters, y'all see the news report, anything.
No matter how
any
small,
news.
big it is, help the police.
Help,
Help
please.
my family.
Thank you.
Can you tell us how often you guys spoke with Markayla to realize that you hadn't spoke to her in a day or so?
I haven't talked to her in about 2 months. So my daughter, I don't know how long she talked to her, like about, you want to say anything? She don't want to say nothing.
I just want to say, I miss my baby. I miss my grandkids. She was a good person, and everybody knows Kaylin would do anything for you. She didn't deserve this. She did not deserve this. She was such a loving person. Everybody knew that knew her. She was never a violent person. People took advantage of her because she was so kind-hearted. And that was my biggest fear because I knew that. Thank you.
Anything you want to
Markayla's hometown, where she'd grown up, where her family still lived. The service drew hundreds of people. The gymnasium, transformed into a memorial space, overflowed with mourners. Family members wore shirts bearing photographs of their loved ones. They shared memories. They cried together. They celebrated 3 lives while mourning their loss. Carol Tyndall spoke about Markayla's character, about her generous spirit, about how much she loved her children. Others remembered 4-year-old Miracle, her bright personality, her infectious laugh, the joy she brought to every room she entered. They remembered 7-month-old Messiah, just beginning to explore the world, just starting to develop his personality, gone before he had the chance to grow. The service wasn't just about grief, it was about remembrance, about ensuring that Markayla, Miracle, and Messiah would be known for who they were, not just for how they died. One family member, Tabby Holiday, spoke to reporters after the service. She wanted Benjamin Taylor to know something specific. He needs to know that she was loved, and so were her kids. She was very well loved. He wanted to just take that away from all of us. The family had a clear message about what they wanted from the justice system. When asked what they were searching for, Holiday's answer was direct. We want the death penalty. In North Carolina, the decision to seek the death penalty rests with the district attorney's office. For months, that decision hung in the balance. Would prosecutors pursue capital punishment in the case of Benjamin Taylor? The criteria for death penalty cases typically include factors like multiple victims, the age of victims, premeditation, and the heinousness of the crime. This case appeared to meet many of those criteria. 3 victims, 2 of them small children, evidence of planning and concealment. But in August 2024, their decision, they announced they would not seek the death penalty against Benjamin Taylor. The announcement disappointed many in Markayla's family and in the community. They felt the severity of the crime warranted the most severe punishment available under law. However, the decision meant Taylor would face 3 counts of first-degree murder without the possibility of death as a sentence. If convicted, he would face life in prison without the possibility of parole. The case would move forward toward trial. More than a year after the deaths of Markayla, Miracle, and Messiah, Benjamin Taylor appeared in a Mecklenburg County courtroom. He faced formal arraignment on all charges: 3 counts of first-degree murder, 3 counts of concealment of an unnatural death, 1 count of habitual felon. The Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Office had prepared a plea deal, an offer that would allow Taylor to avoid trial. Under the terms, Taylor would plead guilty to 2 counts of second-degree murder and concealment of an unnatural death. In exchange, he would be sentenced to between 456 and 560 months in prison. That's 38 to 46 years. Given Taylor's age of 35 at the time, this would likely mean he would spend the rest of his natural life in prison. For some defendants facing 3 first-degree murder charges, this might seem like a favorable option. It would avoid the uncertainty of trial. It would provide a definite sentence rather than risking life without parole. But Benjamin Taylor rejected the offer. His defense attorney entered a plea on his behalf: not guilty to all charges. He also denied his status as a habitual felon despite the documented criminal record. The judge accepted the plea. The case would proceed to trial. Taylor's decision meant that a jury would ultimately decide his fate. If convicted of first-degree murder, he would face life in prison without any possibility of parole. There would be no sentence reduction, no parole eligibility, no release. The trial was scheduled for December 31, 2025. No family members of Markayla Johnson were present in the courtroom that day. They had already said what they needed to say, already made clear what they wanted. Now they would wait for a trial. As the case moves toward trial, the evidence that investigators gathered tells a detailed story. Digital forensics proved particularly important in this investigation. On June 7, 2024, Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department issued a search warrant to Apple. They requested access to iCloud accounts used between January 31, 2020 and March 16, 2020. Detectives believed these accounts could contain critical evidence. From their experience, they knew it was common for suspects to use laptops or cell phones to research methods related to their crimes. Searches about concealment, searches about cleaning, searches about preventing detection. The digital trail supported what physical evidence already suggested. This was not spontaneous. This was planned. The timeline investigators reconstructed showed that Markayla's cell phone was turned off on March 3, the same day her family filed the missing persons report. It was never turned on again, but before that date, someone had been using her phone to send messages, to maintain the appearance of normal communication, to keep family members from becoming immediately alarmed. Surveillance footage from the apartment complex provided additional pieces of the puzzle. The cameras captured Benjamin Taylor's movements in the days and weeks after January was proposed. They showed him making purchases at nearby stores. They showed his late-night activities. They showed him leaving the state on March 6, boarding a passenger bus with minimal belongings. All of this documented. All of this preserved on video. The physical evidence from the crime scene painted a picture of deliberate concealment. The positioning of items in the apartment. The temperature control. The attempts to mask what had occurred. These weren't the actions of someone panicking. These were the actions of someone trying to buy time, trying to delay discovery, trying to create distance between himself and accountability. And relationship dynamics recognize certain behaviors as warning signs. Not every relationship with these patterns ends in tragedy, but when tragedy does occur, these patterns are often present. Benjamin Taylor was 12 years older than Markayla. Age gaps alone aren't inherently problematic, but they can create power imbalances, especially when one person is significantly more experienced in life. Taylor moved in with Markayla very quickly. Within weeks of meeting her, he was staying at her apartment regularly. Within 2 months, he had moved in completely. This rapid progression didn't allow time for Markayla to truly know who he was, to see how he handled conflict, to observe his patterns over different situations and seasons. We tell stories like this for specific reasons, not to sensationalize tragedy, not to exploit grief, not to satisfy some morbid curiosity about violence. We tell these stories because they matter, because 3 people died who should still be alive, because patterns emerged that others need to recognize, because warning signs appeared that families need to understand. We tell these stories because Markayla Johnson's family wants people to know who she was, what her children meant to her, what was lost when they were taken. We tell these stories because maybe possibly someone watching will recognize something in their own life or in the life of someone they love, and maybe that recognition will prompt action that prevents another tragedy. As of now, Benjamin Taylor's trial is scheduled for December 31st, 2025. When that trial begins, a jury will hear all the evidence, the surveillance footage, the digital forensics, the timeline of deception. They will decide Benjamin Taylor's guilt or innocence. If convicted, he faces life in prison without parole for 3 counts of first-degree murder. This story doesn't end here. Justice is still unfolding. We will be following this case closely. When the verdict comes in, when sentencing occurs, we will bring you that update immediately. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the trial update when it's released. If this coverage has been valuable, if you believe these stories deserve to be told with dignity, please subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell. Leave a comment below if you're following this case. Share this video if you think the warning signs we discussed could help someone. We'll see you in the next update. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember the 3 lives we honored today. Markayla, Miracle, Messiah. Their story isn't over yet, and I'll see you in the next one.